Yeah, man. Like years back, when I was in the media a lot, I was on television. I was viral. My name was out there a lot. You know, he came hating back then. I think he just a hating ass nigga, man. Like anybody that's doing good within the Black and Latino community, he start hating on them. You know.
From the very first moment the tension exploded into the spotlight, Papoose didn't hold back. And what Papoose revealed about Claressa Shields and Remy Ma instantly turned a private situation into a full-blown public storm that nobody saw coming, but everybody is now watching closely. The situation began with whispers, subtle hints, and cryptic posts, but once Papoose stepped forward, everything changed. According to Papoose, the narrative that people were believing about Claressa Shields and Remy Ma was far from the truth. He made it clear from the beginning that he wasn't going to stay silent anymore, especially when his name and his personal life were being dragged into conversations that, according to him, were twisted and incomplete. As Papoose started speaking, fans immediately noticed a different energy. This wasn't just a casual response or a simple denial. This was calculated, direct, and filled with emotion. Papoose repeatedly mentioned Claressa Shields, making it clear that there were interactions and situations that the public didn't fully understand. At the same time, he didn't hold back when it came to Remy Ma, hinting that things behind the scenes were much more complicated than what fans had been led to believe. The most shocking part of what Papoose revealed was how long this situation had been building. According to Papoose, the tension involving Claressa Shields didn't just appear overnight. There were moments, conversations, and decisions that slowly created distance and confusion. Papoose suggested that certain actions taken by Claressa Shields were misunderstood, while others were completely misrepresented online. Meanwhile, the mention of Remy Ma added another layer to the situation. Papoose made it clear that his history with Remy Ma couldn't simply be ignored or erased. He spoke about loyalty, respect, and the pressure of maintaining a public relationship while dealing with private challenges. Fans quickly picked up on the tone, noticing that while Papoose was exposing certain truths, he was also holding back some details, almost as if he was trying to protect parts of the story. As the story unfolded, Claressa Shields became a central figure in the narrative. Papoose described moments that made people question what was really going on between him and Claressa Shields. Were they just friends? Was there more? Or was the entire situation being blown out of proportion by social media? Papoose didn't give a simple answer, which only made things more intense. At the same time, Remy Ma was now being pulled deeper into the controversy. Papoose addressed the idea that Remy Ma was in trouble, but he challenged that narrative by explaining that situations are never as one-sided as they appear online. Still, his words hinted that there were serious issues that couldn't be ignored. The internet reacted instantly. Fans started analyzing every word from Papoose, comparing it to past interviews, posts, and appearances involving Claressa Shields and Remy Ma. Some people supported Papoose, believing that he was finally telling his side of the story, while others felt like there was still something missing. What made things even more intense was how Claressa Shields responded indirectly. Without directly naming Papoose, Claressa Shields shared messages that many interpreted as responses to the situation. This created a back-and-forth dynamic where nothing was directly confirmed, but everything felt connected. Meanwhile, Remy Ma remained relatively quiet, which only added more speculation. Fans started asking questions. Why isn't Remy Ma speaking? Is silence a strategy, or is it a sign that the situation is more serious than it appears? Papoose addressing things publicly while Remy Ma stayed quiet created a clear imbalance in how the story was being told. As more details started coming out, Papoose doubled down on his claims. He emphasized that he had nothing to hide and that everything he was saying was based on real experiences. He once again brought up Claressa Shields, explaining that her involvement in the situation was being misunderstood by the public. However, he also made it clear that misunderstandings can still lead to real consequences. The pressure continued to build around Remy Ma, with Papoose speaking openly and Claressa Shields indirectly responding. Many felt that Remy Ma was at the center of a storm that was growing bigger by the minute. Whether or not she was actually in trouble became less important than the fact that her name was now deeply tied to the controversy. By this point, the narrative had completely shifted. What started as rumors had turned into statements, reactions, and counterreactions. Papoose had successfully changed the conversation, forcing people to question everything they thought they knew about Claressa Shields and Remy Ma. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get any more intense, Papoose hinted that there was still more to come. He suggested that what he had already shared was only part of the story, leaving fans wondering what else could possibly be revealed next. The situation now stands at a breaking point. With Papoose continuing to speak, Claressa Shields subtly responding, and Remy Ma remaining mostly silent, the tension hasn't gone away, it's only getting stronger. And this is just the beginning of part 1, because as more truths come out and more voices enter the conversation, the real story behind Papoose, Claressa Shields, and Remy Ma is far from over. From the moment Papoose hinted that there was more to the story, the entire situation took a darker and more intense turn. And suddenly the spotlight grew even heavier on Claressa Shields and Remy Ma as fans began demanding answers that no one seemed ready to fully give. As the pressure mounted, Papoose returned with even stronger statements, making it clear that what he shared earlier was only a fraction of what he knew. According to Papoose, the timeline of events involving Claressa Shields had been completely misunderstood by the public, and he stressed that certain interactions were taken out of context in a way that painted a misleading picture. But what really caught everyone's attention was how Papoose began connecting the dots between Claressa Shields and Remy Ma in a way that suggested deeper tension than anyone initially thought. He implied that the situation wasn't just about rumors or social media speculation, but about real-life misunderstandings that escalated over time and eventually spilled into the public eye. According to Papoose, there were moments when communication broke down completely, and during those moments, assumptions began to take over. He suggested that Claressa Shields may have been pulled into a situation she didn't fully intend to be part of, while at the same time hinting that Remy Ma may have reacted based on incomplete information. The more Papoose spoke, the more complicated the narrative became. He didn't present a simple version of events, where one person was right and the other was wrong. Instead, Papoose painted a picture of overlapping emotions, miscommunication, and pressure from the public that only made things worse. Meanwhile, Claressa Shields continued to respond in a way that kept people guessing. Without directly addressing Papoose, Claressa Shields shared more subtle messages that many interpreted as frustration with how her name was being discussed. Fans noticed the tone shift, and it became clear that Claressa Shields was aware of everything being said, even if she wasn't fully engaging with it publicly. At the same time, the silence from Remy Ma started to feel louder than ever. The longer Remy Ma stayed quiet, the more speculation grew. Some believed that Remy Ma was choosing not to respond to avoid escalating the situation, while others felt that the silence suggested something much deeper was happening behind the scenes. Papoose addressed this silence directly, saying that not everything needs to be handled publicly, but at the same time making it clear that his decision to speak was intentional. He explained that his name had been brought into narratives that didn't reflect his truth, and that he felt the need to correct the record before things went any further. Papoose began hinting at specific situations without fully revealing them. He referenced conversations, moments, and decisions that he claimed would change how people viewed both Claressa Shields and Remy Ma, but he stopped just short of giving full details, which only increased curiosity and tension. Fans immediately began piecing things together, revisiting old interviews, social media posts, and public appearances involving Papoose, Claressa Shields, and Remy Ma. Every small detail suddenly felt important, and theories started spreading rapidly. One of the biggest questions that emerged was whether this situation could have been avoided. Papoose suggested that clearer communication might have prevented things from escalating, but he also acknowledged that once public attention gets involved, it becomes much harder to control the narrative. As the situation continued to unfold, Papoose made it clear that he wasn't done speaking. He hinted that there were still layers to the story that hadn't been addressed, and that if necessary, he would continue to share more. Meanwhile, Claressa Shields appeared to grow more direct with her responses, even if she still avoided naming Papoose. The shift in tone suggested that she was becoming less willing to stay on the sidelines, and fans began wondering if a more direct response was coming. The tension surrounding Remy Ma reached a new level during this phase, with both Papoose and Claressa Shields actively shaping the narrative in different ways. The absence of a clear statement from Remy Ma created a gap that was quickly filled by speculation, assumptions, and rumors. By the end of Part 2, one thing became very clear. This situation was no longer just about a single misunderstanding or a simple rumor. It had evolved into a complex and emotionally charged story involving Papoose, Claressa Shields, and Remy Ma, with each new statement adding more layers instead of resolving the situation. And just as fans began to feel like they were starting to understand what was happening, Papoose dropped another hint that changed everything once again, suggesting that the most important part of the story hadn't even been revealed yet. Setting the stage for an even more explosive continuation from the moment Papoose hinted that the most important part of the story hadn't been revealed yet, the entire atmosphere surrounding Claressa Shields and Remy Ma shifted again. And this time the tension felt heavier, more personal, and impossible to ignore. As Part 3 begins, Papoose comes back with a tone that is noticeably more serious, almost as if he has reached a point where holding back is no longer an option. Papoose makes it clear that the situation involving Claressa Shields and Remy Ma is deeper than public speculation, and he emphasizes that certain truths have been intentionally left out of the narrative until now. According to Papoose, one of the biggest misunderstandings revolves around timing and perception. He explains that moments involving Claressa Shields were interpreted in a way that created suspicion, even though, from his perspective, those moments didn't reflect the full reality of what was happening. Papoose stresses that context matters, but in a fast-moving online world, context is often the first thing to disappear. At the same time, Papoose begins to speak more directly about how these interpretations affected his relationship with Remy Ma. He hints that the pressure of constant public attention, combined with incomplete information, created cracks that were difficult to repair. While Papoose avoids placing full blame on anyone, he makes it clear that the situation reached a point where silence was no longer sustainable. What truly escalates the situation in Part 3 is how Papoose begins to describe specific emotional moments without revealing every detail. He talks about conversations that didn't go as expected, reactions that were stronger than anticipated, and decisions that had lasting consequences. Each time Papoose brings up Claressa Shields, it feels like he's trying to correct a narrative that has painted her in a way he believes isn't entirely fair, while still acknowledging that her presence in the situation changed everything. Meanwhile, Claressa Shields appears to respond with more confidence than before. Fans notice that Claressa Shields is no longer just posting vague messages, but is instead sharing statements that seem more intentional and directed, even if she still avoids mentioning Papoose by name. This shift suggests that Claressa Shields is becoming more comfortable addressing the situation publicly, or at least more willing to stand her ground. The spotlight, however, continues to intensify around Remy Ma. As both Papoose and Claressa Shields become more active in shaping the narrative, the absence of a direct and detailed response from Remy Ma creates a growing sense of uncertainty. People begin to question whether Remy Ma is choosing silence strategically or whether she is dealing with the situation privately in a way that the public cannot see. Papoose addresses this indirectly by acknowledging that not every reaction needs to be public, but he also points out that when a story becomes this widespread, silence can sometimes be interpreted in ways that aren't accurate. This statement alone adds another layer of complexity, because it suggests that even the decision not to speak can shape the narrative just as much as speaking out. As the conversation continues, Papoose begins to focus on the impact of assumptions. He explains that once people start forming opinions based on incomplete information, it becomes almost impossible to change those perceptions. He implies that both Claressa Shields and Remy Ma have been affected by this in different ways, and that the situation has reached a point where correcting the narrative is just as important as telling the truth. What makes this phase of the story particularly intense is the emotional weight behind Papoose's words. There is a sense that he is not just addressing rumors, but also processing the impact those rumors have had on his life. Every time Papoose mentions Remy Ma, there is an underlying tone of history and complexity that cannot be ignored, while his references to Claressa Shields continue to raise questions about how deeply she is connected to the situation. Fans, meanwhile, are more divided than ever. Some believe that Papoose is finally providing clarity, while others feel that his statements are raising more questions than answers. The involvement of Claressa Shields continues to be debated, with some defending her and others questioning her role, while Remy Ma remains at the center of speculation despite saying very little publicly. Moves toward its most critical moments, Papoose delivers one of his strongest statements yet, suggesting that the situation has reached a point where everything may need to come out into the open. He hints that if things continue to be misrepresented, he may have no choice but to share even more detailed information, regardless of how it affects those involved. This statement alone sends shockwaves through the audience, because it implies that what has already been revealed is still not the full story. It also raises the stakes for